thumbnail.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Because then you got to do this.
Hello, and welcome to A Week in Watches, episode 52. This is a special episode. As you can see, I'm not alone in the studio, or Bettner's not alone in the studio, or Zach, I guess you haven't been alone in the studio, but you've been
I've done some remote Week in Watches.
Some remote Week in
Watches.
Watches.
Yeah, this is great.
This is episode 52, 52 weeks in a year, meaning that we have hit a literal year of A Week in Watches. So let me just introduce, obviously, we have Blake Bettner.
Hello, how are you? A year. Congratulations.
One whole year. Congrats to all of us. And, of course, Zach Kazan.
Thanks for having me on the special anniversary episode of A Week in Watches.
And obviously, this is not going to be your ordinary episode. We thought we'd take the moment to do something a little bit different. So we're going to try and get back to answering some questions from the audience. This is going to be more of a roundtable format with the three of us. We have some great questions here that we got from our Worn and Wound Plus Slack community. More on that in a moment, but we do want to get question and answering back on the show. It was a lot of fun, and we just got caught up in, well, the news of the day. If you do want to ask us a question, please leave them in the comments on YouTube on any video. We keep an eye on those. And also, please feel free to email us at info@wornandwound.com, especially if you happen to be a podcast listener. Before we get into it, please also make sure to like and subscribe. It helps us out a lot. And now, well, about our sponsor for this week, which I already mentioned, which is Worn and Wound Plus Slack community. Blake, what is the Worn and Wound Plus Slack community?
Worn and Wound Plus Slack community is a place where you can come and engage with us directly. This is a Slack community, and we're all there present most of the time, talking about watches, nerding out about watches, sharing what we're wearing every single day, talking about new releases. We take content suggestions, content feedback. We're really open to whatever you want to talk about when it comes to watches and beyond. There's even an off-topic area there. So if you want to talk about video games or sneakers, we're game for that too. But it's really a place that you have direct access to us, where we can communicate and engage with you directly about watches or whatever's on your mind.
What is your favorite part of the Slack community?
I like the off-topic.
The off-topic.
Yeah, I like to. We talk about watches all day, professionally.
Yeah.
So like sometimes it's nice to talk to watch people about things besides watches and find those like common interests. So there's movie trailers in the off-topic channel, and others like side conversations, and it's a lot of fun. And we really are there, like 24/7. Like we're on call, like ready to take your questions and chat. So
Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely. And so the way you join the Worn and Wound Plus Slack community is by signing up for our newsletter, which it can easily done through wornandwound.com. There's pop-ups there. Then you just get an invite. It's free to join and free to be a member of, and a lot of fun. We have various programming planned in the works. We've done one live situation, which was a lot of fun. So yeah, if you want to just continue the conversation from Worn and Wound, outside of the comments and into maybe more of like an intimate, fun environment, if you will, please do join. It's a great time. So before we get to the questions, I figured maybe we just talk quickly about A Week in Watches, because we hit a year. What's been some of your favorite A Week in Watches experiences? I know what mine are. Just sitting here every week and doing them.
Just sitting here every week. To me, this is a really fun format to do because it forces you to take a different perspective on what's going on in the week. I think we think about it very literally and how we're slotting content and programming into the site in a written format, but to give kind of a topical, like, look back, here's what's going on, and maybe touch on some news elements that we didn't quite want to get into some of the written, go into the written direction, but are still worth us talking about and giving our feelings on. It's been fun to step in and do them every now and then with you. I really enjoy doing them. And my favorite memory is us doing it together for the first time in Watches and Wonders in Switzerland, and I think we did the same thing at our Wind Up Watch Fair in San Francisco. I hope we do it.
The Watches and Wonders A Week in Watches episode was a lot of fun to shoot, and I thought that was just a really fun episode that came out. It's a fun piece of content that is reliable every week. We really didn't take a week off in the entire
No,
year.
we haven't taken a week off. 52 literal weeks. I mean, I didn't look, but I guess the first one here, early June, late May, whenever it's pretty wild, because it's not the littlest bit of work, but it is fun work. I've found it's a nice way to think about watch content, and it's been really well received, thanks to you, thanks to people who are watching and people who are listening. We really appreciate the comments. We really appreciate the tips, the criticism. We've worked through some kinks, and we are continually improving and kind of figuring it all out and learning. And yeah, we're not gonna slow down.
The comments have been fantastic, by the way. We've been trying to get in the habit of reading some of our favorites out on a weekly basis, so keep leaving those down below for us. We read them all.
And now I guess on with the actual episode. So like I said, we have some questions here. Let's start with one from Steve Faeo. I hope I pronounced that right. Sorry, Steve. If you could wish any watch trend into popularity, what would it be? Zach, where do you sit on this? What's a trend?
So I don't know if it's a trend, but something I'd like to continue seeing in watches that I think it's just on my mind now because we're kind of heading into summer and we're all kind of thinking about like color and like the liberal use of like kind of like unusual colors in watch dials and maybe even in cases too. We see a lot of like black dial divers, like doing this work, and that's fine. Like those are very versatile and classic watches, but I think when we're constantly like looking at watches and evaluating watches, something that I would like to see more brands do is just really experiment and go crazy with different types of color and in unexpected ways and unexpected places.
And I think that you're not wearing it now, but you have recently acquired the
Arcanaut Arc 2 with a Fordite dial, which has many colors in one dial and kind of like a psychedelic pattern. That watch is obviously not for everybody, but I think like the idea of a colorful dial can be embraced by most watch people. There's a place in your collection for a kind of an unusual color or just like a little splash here.
not necessarily a subdued color, but a statement color.
Yeah,
a statement
I think so.
piece. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you on color and material. I like to see brands keep pushing forward. I think overall, just brands taking more risk is something that I would like to see continue to move away from kind of the back catalog, bringing that forward. We all love those watches. There's some great looking watches to come from the kind of heritage inspired type thing, and I love those as much as anybody, but I want to see more brands pushing ahead and really kind of forging new paths into what watches should be moving ahead. What are the trends that we're going to be looking back at and saying, wow, this was some cool stuff that came out in that era. I want to see more of that kind of stuff and more of that originality. And also, again, like getting back to the risk thing, he's got in here as an example, luxury digital watches. I love that.
That'd be awesome.
I'd love to see more of that. I always talk about Velcro straps, more strap materials. One trend that I think we've seen really take shape is quick release strap systems.
Yeah.
But I'm not seeing the kind of innovativeness in the actual straps that we can put on our watches. So, I would love to walk into some luxury watch boutiques and have it be like the Apple Store, where there's 500 different strap options and materials and the fixes. Like I love that kind of thing, and I think more brands now that they have the ecosystem, like they should really take full advantage of it. And of course, oil-filled watches, like high-end quartz watches, all this kind of stuff. I would love to see this kind of stuff take shape. So those are the trends I would love to see.
Yeah, that made me think of something which is also just sort of usability when it comes to bracelets. The way bracelet links are changed can be very difficult at times, and there's a lot of different systems out there. Probably the easiest and frankly the best is just like the single screw. It's hard to mess that up. You don't need special tools or skills to do it. But I have seen toolless bracelets once or twice, and that is something I wish that people would pursue. Actually, Zodiac, of all brands, they had bracelets on some of their quartz chronographs where the end link was a 3-link bracelet. You just turn it, and then you could slide it off. And so it's this amazing toolless thing. Timex has some toolless stuff, but I'd love to see some toolless from the luxury brands. You don't risk, scraping your luxury bracelet as well.
Nice.
A trend that I would like to see push more into popularity. I'm actually wearing this watch for this purpose, the Belcanto. Not the chiming aspect, but rather the decentralized hour and minute. Something that I'm finding personally a lot of joy in. I've been finding watches with this, and it's
You have kind of like a mini collection.
I have
of
a mini
watches
collection,
that are,
yeah.
like, decentralized.
it makes you kind of engage with the watch different visually. It changes the layout of the watch. Clearly, it is doable. Oh, the watch is chimed. Clearly, it is something that is doable by brands. Even a brand like James Lamb. I think he's doing it by just off-centering the movement, probably within the case. But there's a lot of different solutions to this. I think it's a new way to play with the dial that might allow for more expression without perhaps maybe like a huge investment into complications like the way, well, frankly, that is something I would love to see more of.
James Lamb, by the way, another great example of using color
Yeah.
in his watches.
And material.
Yeah.
Yeah. On to our next question. Watch symmetry. Thoughts on the return of in-person watch events, Watches and Wonders type scale, so the big Swiss trade shows, if you will, and whether you prefer in-person only, virtual only, a hybrid, and why. Do we need more than one big event, many small events like last year? That's a lot of questions in one.
Yeah, I enjoy these big in-person events. I always enjoyed Basel. I thought it was kind of like a nice single time. It was a draining event, and so is Watches and Wonders. But at the same time, like you get to see a lot of people that you don't get to see very often. You get to meet a lot of new people that are great. This is all in all like not that huge of a community in like the watch media space. So we get to meet a lot of friends that we make from all over the world in one space. talk about some of the new releases, and obviously meet all the watch brands in person, see all these watches in one place. It's a real like momentous event that has a lot of like, gravity to it. I don't know. I really enjoy the spectacle of it. I know I've talked about this before with Basel, so seeing it kind of come back in some form or another with Watches and Wonders has been really great. I also enjoy like the smaller events, but having this one thing to look forward to every year, I think is good for us, and it's good for the industry. You know, it's the same with like E3 and looking forward to what video games are going to be. Yeah, I feel like there's having this one time that everybody kind of comes together and all eyes are on this world is something special. And so I enjoy seeing it.
I agree. I don't think we need like necessarily more than one big event. Like Watches and Wonders seems to be kind of like the centerpiece event in the absence of Basel. So I think Watches and Wonders does fine as that kind of like tentpole like big event in the spring that pulls a lot of people into Geneva. And obviously there's like many more brands kind of outside the show that exhibit in in hotels and like sideshows and other areas that aren't part of Watches and Wonders specifically. So I think that like that week kind of is like the week for for watch shows. But I like like hybrid events are fine. Like watch brands had to get really inventive over the course of the pandemic, telling their customers and press about watches in ways that didn't like bring people into a centralized location. And I think for a lot of watches that's still appropriate and totally fine, and certainly makes it easier on us, not having to like fly all over the place all the time to look at watches that we could just get a sample of a few months or weeks down the road anyway. So I think there's a balance there, and there's room for both. But I'm with you, Blake. I love Watches and Wonders. I do think it's important for everyone to kind of like come together in person at least once a year to kind of like connect and make those professional connections and actually see watches in person. It's important as well.
I totally agree, and I kind of am thankful that there aren't two events on that scale that we have to do, because it really is so incredibly exhausting. People are sort of figuring out post Basel how to kind of accommodate all types of brands, which is something that I think is still getting figured out. I mean, and just the scope of brands, because Swatch Group isn't involved in Watches and Wonders, for example. Grand Seiko is, Seiko isn't, and it's harder for the kind of middle-sized and smaller players to really find a place in the city. So it's not quite, I feel like, as encompassing of the spectrum of the industry as Baselworld was, but it certainly is this momentous occasion. Like it's a time when the world focuses on watches, not just the watch community, which obviously I'm going to toot our own horn here. We have a Wind Up Watch Fair series, very great series of events, but that's more of the community, right? And that's about that. And obviously it's local in the U.S.
And those are also exhausting. Yeah. So if we have another,
they're also exhausting.
Be like, come on.
There's no escaping the exhaustion.
There's no escaping the exhaustion. It's but I think we're good with one big event for now, but there just needs, I don't know, it needs to continue to grow, and I think it will, So I think for the next question, this one's a little more personal about how we do our business. Is interesting. Peter McConville asks, I'm curious how big media organizations like Warner Wound, thanks for calling us a big media organization.
Big is in quotes.
Yeah, okay. That's true. Decide on what content to make, what watches to cover, etc. In particular, we all talk about the problem of hype watches and the concentration of attention to a few brands. Do you see media companies like yours having a role in overcoming that? Do you have discussions about that internally? There's several questions in there, I think. But obviously, we have the managing editor, senior editor here. So how do we decide on what content to cover?
There's a dartboard.
Look, it's a fine balance to walk. I think it's not like we only write about things that we like. But at the same time, we want the things that we talk about to have an element of like our enthusiasm in it, so that it makes it more interesting to read. Our whole thing here is about experiencing enthusiasm, and we want to be able to reflect that in the watches that we talk about and the people that we talk about and the things that we talk about. So I think it's important for us to kind of keep that in mind. We don't want the articles or editorials to ever just be the numbers, the specs, or anything like that. We want to kind of go beyond that. But in terms of what watches we cover and what types of brands we cover, it's also a balance that we try to strike here. I mean, you talk about the problem of hype watches, and I don't think the watches themselves are the problem. I think a lot of watches fall in that category that we are all various levels of interested in or enthusiastic about. So I think for us, it's important to not get pulled into, well, we're just writing about this brand because they're kind of hot right now in the hype scene, if it's not something that we we are particularly compelled by. So usually if you see something that falls into that hype realm that we are talking about on the site, it's usually for a good reason, and it's usually because one of us finds something really interesting about it that we want to talk about and that we want to nerd out about. But at the same time, there's a lot beneath that. There's a huge world beneath that we are massively interested in, that we feel like deserves exposure. And that's why you can come onto our site and see a hands-on with a Rolex Daytona right next to a hands-on with the Era, like you're wearing right there. And we, most importantly, want to treat them with an equal amount of respect. We talk about them with the same language. We never want there to be a barrier into how you're experiencing this content about these watches. It's really important for us. We are enthusiasts just like you, and we want to present ourselves in that fashion. So it's not super straightforward. We don't have a list of brands that we do or don't talk about. It really comes down to what we are enthusiastic about and how we can kind of get that to come through in the watches that we're writing about.
I can just say, personally, I feel, a certain amount of freedom at Warner One to pursue the things that are of interest to me, and balancing that with stuff that is like legitimately like newsworthy that the community wants to know about is important, because the things that interest us might not interest like broad range of people. We all have like kind of eclectic taste, but I think what makes our readership and our listenership, everyone kind of like shares like a sense of like adventure and eclecticism, and like is curious about the watch world. So even if you're not interested in like, this like Era diver, for example, like hopefully you're interested in like reading what I have to say about it, even if the watch doesn't like strike your fancy like particularly. So
It's always been the case with Warner Wound that we've curated content based on on taste, interests, and obviously then just output capabilities. We can't write about everything all the time, so we choose what is best suited for us. But I will say for all of us, I think we're really motivated by the product. We're really motivated by watches, by the technology of watches, by brands doing interesting things, by design, and less about necessarily just pure brand prestige or anything like that. I mean, when a weird little brand drops a weird little watch that's really cool, I think sometimes we're more excited about it than the big release from something else. And that might not win us any traffic points, but we feel good about it.
On the other side, we're not writing about anything hype watches because of the hype, and we oftentimes don't even really acknowledge that element of it. It has to be I has there. So.
yeah.
Great
you
question.
wrote an article about hype watches.
I did.
Yeah, and I've bought a few hype watches. What can I say?
Yeah,
it happens. I think for our last question, we're going to go to Sean Martin, who asks, what is an underrated material used in watchmaking that maybe has been used, but is not used enough in our opinion? What might be the next up-and-coming hot material?
So I will slightly turn this around and say that I'm mostly excited about kind of like the democratization of some of the exotic materials coming into spaces and down into the price realm. What used to be like really exotic to have like a carbon watch or this or that, we're starting to see a lot more of in the micro brand space and the small independents, however you want to say it. So now we have really interesting materials at play in the $1,500, $2,000, $2,500 range, like carbon, like ceramics. So to me, that's like really exciting, seeing all this stuff come down into like a more approachable realm. But I also say aluminum.
Made
Aluminum.
from recycled coffee.
Whatever,
materials.
aluminum, right? Isn't it all recycled? Like I feel like that
it
should
is,
start
yeah.
to just be like the default. Like everything, all the materials are just recycled from something else. Like I shouldn't have to read about like it. Of course, I'm just going to assume.
Aluminum's tricky. Hamilton did aluminum dual crown watches a few years ago in these great colors. I don't know if it caught on. Maybe they were too early for the experimentation
It's
with
tough.
aluminum.
Yeah, it's a tough
But it
thing.
is interesting.
Bulgari has some interesting ones as well.
Yeah, Bulgari has an aluminum watch, which is really rooted in like a 90s kind of like love it or hate it design. I tend to really like it, but it's a watch that is, I would say, like not well loved by the masses. Like it's a very much a niche product. I'm with you though. I think that it's interesting to see some of these like smaller brands incorporate what were traditionally like higher end materials into more affordable watches. The one that immediately comes to mind is Notice. They released a new watch at the Wind Up Watch Fair in San Francisco recently that incorporated ceramic in like really cool kind of like pastel colors. Very cool execution and use of ceramic on that watch. So I personally really like ceramic. Like that's sort of like something that like that's a material that I would like to see more brands make use of, especially in an affordable way. I used to own a ceramic watch. I kind of miss it. I'd sort of like to have another one at some point. I'd just encourage brands to just like try different things. I'm not a designer. I'm not like a creative person when it comes to watches. So I'll leave that to the folks who are better at that. But I'm curious to see what people who do that for a living can come up with.
Piggybacking on the ceramic comment, we're also seeing the use of Cerakote now, which is a really interesting exterior coating, but it it can bring color to a watch where color might not be executable in metal. And ceramic would be too high of an investment, especially to get that kind of level punchy color. So it's interesting to see people experimenting with that. I'll go back to titanium and aluminum, but used in movements. I've seen this once or twice here and there. People making lightweight movements out of these materials. I believe Omega did it. I know Romain Gaultier did it, but actually, like Weiss Watch did that several years ago. They made an ultralight watch, making the plates out of I forget if it's titanium or aluminum. But it's a doable thing. Obviously, it's not cheap, but I think that brands that are closer to manufacturing could start experimenting with that for more ultralight watches that are maybe more in the obtainable spectrum of things.
This could use a titanium movement.
That could use a titanium movement. Yeah.
There we go.
It's, even out of titanium, that thing is quite heavy.
It's still
And I think that's where we're going to end it for questions this week for episode 52 of A Week in Watches. Once again, please do send questions. This was a lot of fun. I had fun.
Yeah, it was great.
We want to incorporate them into the show more often. Thank you so much once again for supporting A Week in Watches for a full year. I think this has been a great experiment, and like I said, we're not slowing down. I don't know, maybe we'll take a week off. Should we ever take a week off? We'll see. No promises
There's
to us.
three of us.
We just rotate.
We'll rotate.
No weeks off ever. Don't guarantee that. Please do join Worn Around Plus Slack community if you are interested. Once again, you do that by signing up for our email newsletter. If you have already done that and you have any questions, please just email info@wornaround.com. We'll get that sorted out for you. Like and subscribe. And check out wornaround.com daily for excellent reviews, news, and all other sorts of things, watches, written mostly by these two guys.
Thank you so much for tuning in every week. We really appreciate it. We love each and every one of you that come up to us at the Wind Up Watch Fairs. It means really the world to us. So thank you so much for making this what it is.
Yeah, this has been great. Really enjoyed being on in the studio for Week in Watches for the first time. So yeah, thanks to everyone for watching week in and week out and for enjoying all the content.